I love watching sports highlights because I'm a guy.
Don't ask me to stop being a man.
Every once in a while when you're watching sports, you'll be surprised by some super athletic play where someone just does something that's jaw-dropping you weren't expecting to see, and you like jump out of your seat like, how did that happen? And so that's what I want to talk about today is athleticism and how can you tell if someone's athletic and what are the components of athleticism. Now, one of the reasons I decided to make this video is because a couple weeks ago, I was watching a highlight video from Nikola Jokic, who's a player I love watching, and I made a comment afterwards saying I usually like some of the more athletic players' highlights, but I just love his passing game and his style. And everyone agreed with me on the comments, except one person chimed in a couple weeks later, and they kind of criticized my take on it and said I had a very narrow perception or understanding of athleticism. And at first I took offense with it, but the more I thought about it, it's like, yeah, he has a point. Okay, so first I'd like to differentiate between fitness and athleticism. I remember a long time ago when I was first taking classes on this topic, back then they had the definition of physical fitness was that you had muscular strength, endurance, flexibility, and a healthy body composition. So someone could be physically fit if they were free of disease, healthy, could do their daily tasks, and that's great, but someone may be physically fit, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be athletic. Now, I would define athleticism as having the physical skills and qualities that are ideal for sports performance. There's lots of different attributes that can play into that. I'm going to list these not necessarily any order, but let's start off with first power and strength. So power and strength are two different things. Feel free to look up the subtle difference between the two, but having strength and power is very advantageous, especially in any sort of contact sport. Just think if you have more strength than your opponent, it's going to be a big benefit to you. Speed is obviously another important part of athleticism. When we think of speed, a lot of times we just think of Usain Bolt and sprinters and things like that, but there's different types of speed. There's reaction time. Think of someone, how quick they can get out of the blocks in a race, or when the ball's hiked, how quickly a lineman can respond after that. Now, as you look at these picture highlights, you can see that having quick reflexes and good reaction time is great for your team. Can be beneficial, but it's also just as beneficial to save your life in some of these cases. Endurance is another important aspect. Now, I hate to brag, but I would be a world-class marathoner if we just stopped after the first 50 yards. I can get out pretty quick, but I can't imagine how some of these people can maintain their pace. You look at these elite athletes like Eliud Kipchoge, who's essentially sprinting for 26 miles. It just blows my mind. Now, endurance may not be such a big thing for something like, pole vault or shot put or some really quick event where it's over in just a matter of seconds. But if you have any event you participate in and it's more than 1 minute, you need to have endurance. It's important to be able to execute and perform when you're fatigued and tired. Some other components of athleticism are mobility and agility, basically the ability to move your body. This can help in sports if you're trying to be elusive, trying to lose someone. I think of football players when they're juking and cutting and faking people out. Now, I'm so impressed with athletes who have the speed and agility of a gazelle, and then when it's time to initiate contact with someone, they have the strength of a bear. So it's so cool to see them put all these different components together. Now, I'm obviously starting to clump some of these together, but some other important attributes would be coordination, balance, timing, depth perception. Think of someone on a golfer on the fairway or a quarterback throwing a long pass, knowing how far they need to do it. It's always a beautiful thing when you see someone put all these things together and just pull off an amazing play. Now, when a potential pro athlete's looking to make it to the NFL, they go to the NFL Combine, and that's where they're going to, pick apart how their abilities and measure their, the raw talent, their potential they've got in these areas. So they'll do things like some agility skills, speed skills, but then they've got the bench press for strength. They've got their speed in the 40-yard dash, vertical jump, and broad jump. By the way, jumping is a product of a combination of many of these attributes we talked about. When it comes to jumping, it never hurts to have hops. I can't think of any sports where it's not advantageous to have some jumping ability. Now, there is one other attribute or component of athleticism that a lot of times we forget because it's not a physical one. And I think this is just as important as any of the others, but that would be one's mindset. You've got to be mentally tough. You've got to be prepared. You have to have focus. You have to have confidence. You can't get discouraged easily. And so that's a huge part of this. I was watching some highlights from a basketball game last week, and this reminded me of how important it is that you have to be focused. You can't be easily distracted. You have to have the right mindset. Now, we know Kobe had this with his Mamba mentality. Jordan obviously had that competitive nature, had that proper mindset. So again, I can't think of any great in any sport No matter how great their physique attributes are, if they don't have their mind game right and the proper mindset, they're not going to be a great athlete. Another easy way to look at athleticism and see if someone's athletic is to just see their potential for playing multiple sports. I think of people like Wilt Chamberlain, Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, Jackie Robinson. These are guys that could just do anything. In fact, Jackie Robinson, a lot of people know him so well for breaking the color barrier in Major League Baseball, but they don't realize when he was at UCLA, he had varsity letters in football, basketball, track, and baseball. I mean, so it's just amazing when you see some people that are so good at so many different sports. Another example of this is the decathlon. This is where they have 10 different track and field events over a couple of days where these guys compete in. And here I'm showing some highlights from Ashton Eaton, a world record holder in the event. Now, he may not be the very best in each one of these individual events, but for me, it's just so impressive to see someone that has so much versatility and can adapt and do so well in so many different sports or activities. Sometimes today, I think we put too much emphasis on how someone looks. You know, we focus on aesthetics or their appearance as opposed to athletics, how they perform. An example of this, if you're ever playing pickup game, you know, like flag football or basketball or something, and you're picking teams from strangers, people that you don't know, you're always going to pick the guy with the big physique, the bigger guy with the six-pack, more muscles, just an assumption that he's a better athlete. But it's funny how many times over the years I've seen that happen, and the guy is really not very coordinated or skilled in a particular activity, even though he looks like a great athlete. So looks can be deceiving, and you don't want to judge someone just off their appearance. Now, some examples of people you might misjudge, I think of in the NBA, Zach Randolph. He's never had a physique that impressed me or doesn't even look like a basketball player, but he's an effective athlete. If you saw Shaun White on the street, didn't know who he was, didn't recognize him, you wouldn't just look at his physique. There's an Olympian. In boxing, there's people like Butterbean that may not have the ideal physique, but they can get the job done when it comes to knocking someone out. So when it comes to athletics and competition, you don't want to judge a book by its cover. I've done some videos on that topic in the past if you want to look those up. So would you rather be fit or athletic? They're not necessarily exclusive of one another, but they're also not necessarily synonymous. You can be fit and healthy and not athletic. So next time you hear someone talking about someone who's athletic or an athletic player, you don't always have to think of just Ja Morant and LeBron James and those types. Remember, there are many forms and components of athleticism in a wide variety of sports. So we don't want to just get locked into thinking it all has to do with strength, speed, and vertical. Anyway, if you can think of anything I missed in here, any important components of athleticism, I'd love to hear in the comments. Also, I'm working on a good 30 plus health and fitness topic videos right now in the hopper. I'm looking forward to share, so feel free to subscribe if you haven't yet to the channel. We'll talk to you later.